This episode of the Simon Racing Report is brought to you by the SimonRacingReport.com. That is the podcast website, and you can find the links to the YouTube channel, iTunes, Stitcher, the RSS feed. It's all there on the homepage. And don't forget to like the podcast on Facebook. Click on the link on the homepage or go to Facebook and search the Simon Racing Report. And also, most of all, follow me on Twitter at JohnnyS8. JONNYESS8. Please like, share, subscribe this episode if you like it. Subscribe to the podcast, though. Most of all, I have overwhelming support, and I'm just hoping that everybody who is overwhelmingly supportive has subscribed to the podcast. And most of all, as well, if you are very overwhelmingly supportive, I can't even say those two words, feel free to donate to me using the Simon Racing Report link on our homepage on the website. It's a PayPal link. Feel free to donate. Don't have to, but obviously any contribution you make is I'm not joking, seriously appreciated, and it's just going to help me devote a lot more time to definitely producing exponentially greater content, and I hope it's high quality content. We strive for that here at the Simon Racing Report, the one-man team. So let's see if we can do it. But anyway, Josh Rogers coming up next. He is a very exciting young talent in sim racing. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Simon Racing Report. Josh Rogers, my fellow Aussie. It's actually, I'll tell you what, it's very good to have someone who you can correspond and coincide and record a podcast in the same time zone for once.
Oh, I can imagine. For me, having to practice and stuff, it hurts my head.
People don't understand that with sim racing and practice. Like, it actually is a struggle for us to find a team that you can find a good time zone with and actually spend time on track together. You got to be physically present and build that relationship. Yeah,
for sure. Like, I mean, most of the time I do a lot of my practice on my own, but really, if I want to do laps with, like, for instance, the guys at Burst or Pash at Core, it's getting up at kind of 6 or 7 in the morning, which doesn't sound that late, but when you're normally up until 1 a.m, because that's what your time clock's used to, it's can get a little bit tricky.
Yeah, Pash, I remember. Before I don't know if he's working now or whatever he's doing, but he's a late nighter guy. Like, he'll be up until our afternoon, so it actually works perfect. Because sometimes he'll be testing until like 4 a.m. He's got that weird sleeping pattern, and then you're like, oh great, it's 12 o'clock here, perfect timing. I'm already awake.
Yeah, exactly. Like, most of the time we're still around testing at 9 or 10, which really is like 3 a.m. for him, so it's a bit nuts, but I couldn't imagine staying up that late and then having to get up for work in the morning, stuff like that.
Yeah. So the other thing is, testing's a trouble for Australian sim racers. If you go international, if you're in all these Aussie leagues and be it Supercars, it's a little bit different. But then we look at lag and latency. Can there ever be a solution to it?
Ultimately, not really. Unless I guess internet speeds or whatever can get to the point where the latency can be very similar over those long distances. At the moment, our 400 millisecond to European servers isn't brilliant, but at the end of the day, what iRacing gives us is still way better than what you might see. Like, for instance, if you're playing CSGO, you're never going to be able to play at 400 ping, so it is still quite impressive, but it can pose some issues, for sure. Yeah,
and CSGO also, you wouldn't be able to play at 400 ping due to the toxic community trying to slide you off all the time. That might be there.
Telling you to go away.
Yeah, there's like, I don't know, CSGO is such a great game with so much potential, but the community is very good, but then half of it can be very toxic. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. So,
another day.
What techniques do you have then when you drive to avoid lag and latency contact? Because it's someone that Riley Preston, something that he never figured out. He's always crashing all over the place, not because he's Pastor Maldonado, but just he'll find a gap at turn 1 at Monza and be like, there's the gap. And 2 seconds later, it's like some invisible wall just shoved me into the gravel. And you can't do anything. Is there anything you do to avoid those troubles?
Yeah, look, unfortunately, depending on your latency, usually on like a US server, it's okay. Most of the time you can drive within close proximity and not have any dramas, but sometimes definitely you do have to be a little bit more cautious. And just leave a little bit more room, or at least keep yourself mindful to the fact that something could happen, whether you can get out of that safely. Like for instance, you probably see me on lap 1 in WCS races, and I don't take as many risks as someone like Mac will. It's not worth that risk for me, especially in the open wheeler cars. It seems like the latency is a little bit worse than some other cars, but like the way the cars will bounce off each other. Like really the only thing you can do is just leave yourself a little bit more space, and be mindful to possible accidents or movements of other cars.
Yeah, when I went international for sim racing for the first time, that sounds weird, but what I mean is when I went and left racing in all these Aussie leagues and I went to FSR in 2014, I did the Winter Series, and it was R Factor 2 in a sort of stage where like you could have great internet, but the pings would just be off canny, like literally weird as. So I remember going into Silverstone at one point, and I went into Cops, and I actually went through a guy to overtake him. And I was so confused. I was like, did I just crash with this person? I didn't mean to crash with them. They were on the outside, and all of a sudden we were right into each other. And I went through, and then ended up on top somehow. I don't know if he backed off or he got scared, but moral of the story is that that's what happened there. So then the other techniques I used was, as ping and internet got better and R Factor to improve their whole matchmaking servers and everything, I started to do what you did and sort of avoid battles where I could. And try to, if we're going side by side into turn 1, you had to give a lot more space than you should. And it just sucks, doesn't it? Because sometimes you might lose out in a couple of positions you should have gained during the race.
Yeah, it definitely does suck sometimes, but unfortunately, it's the situation that we're in. Thankfully, though, on iRacing, you can get away with it more often than not. I think people like us would probably definitely struggle on other platforms much more than what we do at the moment.
So when did you start sim racing? Because I know you're fairly young and you're a fairly successful karter. When I say fairly successful, you know what I mean. So like when you started, and when you say when you started, did you start off with a wheel straight away, or were you on the keyboard like a rookie?
So to be honest, it depends whether you're looking for kind of online sim racing or just racing games
whatever.
in general.
Racing games.
But I've been driving around for quite a long time. I'd say I probably first started back in 2005, 2006 on Gran Turismo titles in PS2. From there, I definitely went to the Codemasters F1 games, like I'm sure most people did on the PS3. Bit of console action. But from there, I went to started playing R Factor. Definitely just with the keyboard, nothing serious. Yeah. But when I first got my first wheel, which was I think it was a Driving Force GT, I definitely started to enjoy those F1 games and R Factor a bit more. But it wasn't until 2014 since I started online sim racing. From there, went through the ranks, started driving the V8, was one of the first cars. Then competitively started racing that, and then moved into the GT World Championship Series. Upon that, I started looking for a bit more in myself. Went to qualify for F1, which is where I am now, which is pretty exciting. It's been a long trip, but yeah.
It's been a fairly successful rookie season too. We'll divulge into that later. I don't want to get into that too early, but when you say you got into V8 Supercars first, the one thing that fascinates me is, for example, everyone considers you the king of Bathurst. My point is here, whenever I did V8 Supercar racing in R Factor, I was quick on most tracks that weren't Bathurst. And to me, I've always noticed that Bathurst is Australia's Nürburgring. Like for someone like you just understand where every bump is, where every turning point is, how to push a V8 Supercar as quick as you can. And you just seem to nail that track more than others. Is that true? Or is it just a track where, like any other one, and you just seem to be a lot of a master at it than other people?
I think it's definitely a track I enjoy more than most, but I think in particular it's probably more so the fact that it's not that we love the track so much that we want to drive it 24/7. I think it's the fact that because we started driving the V8 there, a car that regularly goes to tracks like Phillip Island and Bathurst, Oran Park on odd occasion, but most of the time Phillip Island and Bathurst, we get to learn the track a lot more. Then, when you get into categories that are with a different type of car are going there, you can take some of those traits, and most of those traits, especially in terms of learning where all the track is, little techniques that can just gain you a little bit of time, especially down the S's and over the top. Little bumps like you were saying. It can definitely pay dividends, but I think the biggest thing is definitely the fact that we started driving a car that goes there so often, so we can do a lot of laps there.
Yeah, that's just something I said, like I noticed before, was at the V8 Supercar community, you could jump in and be an average, European, and you might match some of the top guys at any other racetrack, but when it comes to Bathurst, you might be back end of the order, because those guys lap there so much that they just understand that track, like with their eyes closed, basically. It's that dominant, and that's what I was saying. It's like the Nürburgring, basically, for Australia. But so what's your favorite motor racing series then? Because now you're racing in F1 for sim racing, and you've always been known up until this point as the supercar genius on sim racing. So is it supercars or F1 or both?
Look, it's a tough one.
GT?
I think because F1's a new challenge, something that I haven't really been a part of for very long, and something that's still growing. It's it's such a hard choice. I think I definitely still have a soft spot for the V8. Like I'd like to come back for the V8 Sculpt Enduros, just because there's a little bit more time on my hands. Having VRS GT being over. But look, I'd say at the moment the series I'm most enjoying is F1, but in terms of F1 and GT, it's really tough. But yeah, I'd say F1 probably just takes that. Yeah, from there it'd be GT and then V8. If you would have asked me that 2 years ago, it would have definitely been the V8. But I think things have changed a little bit, but definitely still a soft spot there for it.
So if I asked you in the real world, once you win a couple more national titles for karting, jump into a real car, and I asked, where do you want to go? Would you say Formula One? Would you say supercars? Like, what would you enjoy most in the real world then? Same answer?
Honestly, I think the supercar. I think just it being an Australian series and something that a lot of people in Australia, look at as the pinnacle. I think, it would definitely be on my radar. Personally, it's the kind of series that it is still difficult to break into, but it's nothing like you'll see in overseas. Way less, stepping stones in terms of categories. Ultimately, you could go from Aussie racing cars to Super 2 and then straight into a supercar, or even Kumo straight into a supercar. You still need the funding behind you, but if you were to go to Formula 1, you need to get through F4, F3, F2, maybe even a little bit before F4, like Formula Renault. So it's a lot more years and a lot more funding behind it as well. So I think, taking all that into consideration, the V8 would be where I would want to go. But ultimately, I'd have to actually win an Australian Championship first. But look, I don't know where that goes, but that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, I did some Formula Ford commentary last year out in Victoria, and you meet a lot of these guys who are insanely quick. I saw a couple of national rounds, and at the end of the day, I'm like, as quick as these guys are, some of them just said, we just don't have the budget to go overseas. And V8 Supercars isn't actually a bad option to resort to, if you're going to stay local. I still think... do you think V8 Supercars is an underrated series out there in the world, the most underrated motor racing series, or do you think it's properly rated? I think it's been more recognized over the past 5 years.
I think it's definitely been more recognised since probably since we started going overseas. I think
like
in particular when we went to Coda. Yeah. I think when we went to Coda, that probably really shaped things a little bit more. Got that the American audience on board, and now being on Fox, it's way more accessible to that viewer base. Typically, though, I guess it is underrated, but I think the fact that it's the pinnacle of Australian motorsport, really, it's not like it's something that's easy to get into. So, having a category that's underrated and difficult to get into could pose some challenges.
The season I was into the most was 2010, when oh gosh, what's his name already? who won the championship in 2010 again? Fiat Supercars. James Courtney.
Was it Courtney? Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So Courtney versus Whincup, and it went down to that final round where everyone had an accident. I think it was raining as well. That was an insane final round at Sydney.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Everyone was on their slicks and it all started raining.
Yeah.
It's quite entertaining.
At a racetrack that isn't... I mean, that's not even a racetrack. That's a joke for a racetrack. But that's why it was so entertaining, because it was a joke of a racetrack.
Yeah, exactly.
Which made it a great racetrack.
I mean, I found Homebush entertaining. I think it wasn't a great racing track, but to watch, I've been there a couple of times. It was quite exciting being there. But yeah, racing point of view, it wasn't that great. But, you know, same could be said about Newcastle. But
I remember the Gold Coast round that year as well. 2010, and they had all the guest drivers. They had Mika Salo, Jacques Villeneuve. I remember Jacques being turned around at turn 1 and completely raging on the throttle.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I'll always remember that one.
Jacques always
getting T-boned by about 3 cars.
Yeah, and the thing was, like, all right, fair enough. He got T-boned by 1, and he's like, fuck this, I'm taking out another 4 cars with me. If you're not going to let me race, I'm taking out another 4 or 5 behind me. I'm like, a pretty smart idea by Jacques Villeneuve. I don't even know if he got penalised for that at the time. Viet Supercar pretty lenient with their penalties, hint F1. But anyway, back to sim racing now. So technically you're still part of TTL eSports, right? You're just on loan to Burst eSports. How does that work?
Well, really what it is I'm a TTL eSports driver. However, for the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series, I am a driver for Burst. I wouldn't necessarily say loaned, but it's definitely a driver for 2 teams at this point. But I'm only expected to drive with Burst in F1. Everything else, like Le Mans on the weekend, I was with TTL, the V8 TTL, GT3 TTL. So whether that stays that way next year, we'll find out. But yeah, definitely. I wouldn't say loaned, but yeah, that's how it works.
And what sucked you in? Everybody's been saying exciting things about Burst eSport, and this is going to be a team of the future. And Marcus Jensen, what sucked both of you guys into that team? There surely is something you can reveal.
Honestly, I think it's just mainly the respect from the people behind it. They really enjoy this sim racing. The esport of sim racing. They really enjoy it. They really respect us and respect it. It's something that means a lot to them, and I think their positivity and motivation to make it something big is probably the thing that drew both myself and Marcus on. But definitely driving alongside someone like Marcus, who had experience last year, and yeah, with the car and with the driving, being able to test with him and kind of push ourselves forward, I think is another point as well.
And the other day, they also released the Facebook and Twitter page. Was it just Twitter? I don't know.
I think it was just Twitter. Yeah, they've had their Facebook for a little while, but
it was probably good. We were supposed to record this podcast. It was like a month ago. It was my fault though. I kept delaying, and then I'm like, oh great! Now Burst eSport have a Twitter page out. You can plug that in the podcast. Works out perfectly.
Works out perfect.
The other stuff I've heard with Burst eSports is, I mean, I might be wrong with this, and you probably can't say it anyway, so don't get yourself in trouble, but no affiliation with any F1 team? Like nothing to do with F1 eSports, perhaps? Like no sort of brother-sister project there?
Not something I can...
if you can't say it, don't worry.
But no, honestly, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing to do with that. But, anything can... any surprises can pop up any time, so I'm not sure.
No, that's fine. I don't want to get you in trouble. We'll move on from that. Although my listeners are going to be like, fucking say something. I want to talk about driver training. So I actually didn't know you did driver training sessions. And the one thing before we talk about driver training is all your karting experience. how are there some drivers out there who end up having a successful motor racing career skipping karting and not learning all the basics you can from learning from obviously karting as a junior? Is it just an instinct? Is it just luck? Is it somehow something you're born with? I don't believe in that, but is it?
I think it's a tricky one, to be honest. Depends how long you spend in the lower category cars. If you've got the funding to be able to do it, spending 3 or 4 years in something like Formula Ford or Formula V even, is enough to hone your skills like you would in karting. You see plenty of people that only spend 2 or 3 years in karting and then they move on to cars because they've learnt as much as they need to know. But in terms of people that skip karting entirely, I think it's one of those things where A, they've got the instinct, or B, they definitely have to spend a lot more time in those lower categories to kind of build themselves and learn a little bit more about the kind of environment that they're in. But yeah, I think it's probably more so just spending time in the lower categories.
Yeah, I listened to Jacques Villeneuve on the Beyond the Grid F1 podcast, now unfortunately Paul Smith's favourite podcast, over the Simon Racing Report. But he was talking about how he never karted, and I don't know if he never karted or he didn't do it for many years, but anyway, he ended up going into a race once where I think Senna passed him around the outside. It might have been Silverstone in the wet, and there was just no chance for Villeneuve to try the line, and he just didn't have that feel that was so important. So I guess it does have that effect later on, but do you know anyone now that you've seen skip the karting ranks and they might be the same age as you, and you thought, how the hell do they have the money and the skill to be able to race in like Formula Ford? So Sebastian Job, actually, I don't know if Sebastian Job's karted, but he's a guy who's also found a Formula 4 drive.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Job, actually. I think he didn't he win some competition?
Yeah.
Either way, brilliant job. But in terms of your question with the people I've known that haven't really had any karting experience, it's not. Yeah. I don't know. It's honestly not something I've really come across. Most of the people I know are within karting, and the people that I see and have raced against in cars have always been in karts. Honestly, it's not something I've come across, but if I do, it would definitely be interesting to kind of ask them and see how they felt about it.
But driver training now. So when we spoke to Cembuluk Bassi, not the last podcast, the first time he was on about a couple of years ago, he spoke about his famous one rule. And do you have any other techniques or tricks like that where you can sort of teach people how to properly take control of a car and not go out and lap and crash and then reset and press enter and do whatever the fuck they're doing? Honestly,
the quickest way to learn is to go out and crash the car all the time. But at the end of the day, honestly, the rule I live by is the fact that there should be no time between your brake and throttle. All your inputs have to be smooth, but the car's never going to do what you want it to do if you're sitting there coasting from entry to exit of a corner. You're going to lose speed off the corner and you're going to lose turn coming into the corner. So that's where the braking technique of trail braking and such comes into play. But definitely, if you're coasting, you're giving yourself a lot more problems than gains. But yeah, honestly, that's one of the biggest rules. Another though is your turning input. I see a lot of people that continue to turn the wheel like you're in a road car. If you're trying to do a U-turn or something. And the car just understeers worse. So it's something you see quite a lot, but something to be mindful about.
Yeah, I mean that's something where I remember when the tire model came really complex in rFactor 2, and people were like, why is my front left at 55% after 3 laps? And I'm like, because look at this final corner. It's a right-hander. Stop turning. Sounds weird. Sounds like I'm in Pixar's Cars or whatever that movie's called. And they're like, turn the other way. I don't know if I don't even know what the scene I'm talking about.
Turn right to go left.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's the scene.
Yeah.
So I'm not telling people to turn the other way. Because if you do that at Estoril at the final corner, you'll end up crashing in the barrier. So don't do that, ladies and gentlemen. But just unwind the steering a little bit, back off the throttle, and just sort of get the front end to bite in a little bit less, and you'll be all right. But so back to training then. So what I noticed as well is you spoke about the best way to learn is to crash the car all the time, which is true. You're finding the limit, and then you back off every now and then until you no longer crash. But then you always get those drivers that are sort of, I don't want to say hot lappers, but they'll go out and in an hour of practice, let's say they crash about 35, 40 times, and they're just not learning anything. So to me, it's better when I see those, like if I see a Formula One driver playing a racing game, he'll do 10 laps, never played the game before, and just 10 pace and smart laps at his own pace, and they get quicker each lap. The best example is Lewis Hamilton. I don't know if you've seen that video where he was racing in Gran Turismo.
Yeah. And it's a different way to approach it. When you're, say for example, you're in a league that has limited practice time, that's definitely the way you'd want to go about it. But the way we can able to practice, I still think, it's not like it's crashing all the time, but it's making mistakes. For me, the quickest way to learn a track is to just approach every corner maximum, find your limit, back it off a little bit, do the lap time, and then focus on improving your optimal. From there, if your optimal's 8/10 faster than your best lap, you can just do a clean, smooth, conservative lap, and you will beat your last PB. Now that lap time will become easy to do. Then you can slowly chip away, get closer to your optimal. Once you're within, half a tenth or a tenth of your opti, you can start pushing harder again to try and find more. Likelihood is along the way you'll improve your opti anyway, but
yeah.
That's something, you notice you see people, their optimal's a second and a half faster than their lap time, and they're just continually pushing to try and get that lap every time. But you'll have a little bit more confidence in yourself if you know that you're improving lap time wise along the way. But yeah.
One thing is, it's not just motor racing, but any sport. The best way to find your improvements is to probably look at yourself from a month ago, or let's say 2 weeks ago, depending on how hard you're working, because a lot of people will be like, hey, I'm not as quick as I was yesterday, but it's just too short of a period to evaluate yourself. But if you go and let's say you watch yourself, Josh, I was going to say Interlagos round 1 this year, but you didn't even connect to that race. round 2. And you see how you were driving then compared to now. Marcus Jensen, perfect example, your teammate. I don't know where his improvement came from, but again, that's something where you have to look long term at that. Which actually, by the way, I don't understand when you said if you're in a league with limited practice time. Does that exist in sim racing?
Look, honestly, I don't think it is. It was an example I thought I might use in case in case a league comes along that does that, which I don't think it's a terrible idea, but I think it would set the cats among the pigeons. But I think it would just kind of spread the field out a little bit more and probably makes things a little bit less competitive. But
so that's it was the Apex eSport series, this Mexican series that was had a lot of famous Mexican sim races, and they used to release the track and car combination 24 hours before the event. This is on RaceSpot TV, by the way, but they'd have to let everybody know the sort of pool of tracks and cars that you'd be racing because you'd have to purchase those. So technically, you sort of still knew what car and track combination you'd be racing, if that made sense. So that's the closest we've ever had to it. The only other way is to race offline with yourself and trust yourself and against AI, which is just boring as hell.
Yeah. I think OSR did a similar series like that. It was called Racer Champions. It was broadcasted by VX Online like 5 or 6 years ago now. But they kind of released the track a little bit before, and it provided really good racing, to be honest. Same car. I think it might have even been fixed set. I'm not sure. I can't remember. I wasn't there, but it was before my time. But it's definitely exciting.
So, are you a popular streamer yet? Are you still getting those followers?
I'm not popular. I'm trying.
How do you try? How does it work?
Just keep doing it. Honestly, for me at the moment, it's just a matter of just stream. My PC doesn't want to be friends with me at the moment, which is tough. Makes stuttering and all sorts of things, but it makes it difficult. But I think once you, at least for me, I feel like once you can build a small base, then you can really see whether what you're doing is working or it's not. You've got all the analytics to look at to show that. you know, if you start trying something different and your viewers drop, then you're not growing at as big of a rate as what you'd like to be, then you know you're probably doing something slightly wrong. Which, you know, it's tricky to without asking somebody to know what that thing is that you're doing wrong. But at least you know there's something you can work on. But you know, there's always room for improvement in anything you do.
The one thing I've noticed is, like, no matter how talented you are, all the best streamers out there just have that personality. The sort of wacky, weird personality, or they're funny, or there's something about them that appeals people to watching them. And obviously you have to be good as well. You can't be absolute Maldonado at sim racing and expect to be... Well, by the way, can I just apologize to Pastor Maldonado? Won an F1 race. Not that bad. Tacky into it.
Shame the garage caught fire afterwards, though. They were celebrating a bit too hard.
Oh, God. I remember that. He actually had to run out with his, I think it was his nephew or niece on his shoulders or something. Looking back on that, no, everyone's safe. Probably a great way to celebrate a win. Burn the whole team in the garage. Point is, sorry. So what were we talking about? The streaming, right?
Yeah.
It's the personality to me that makes a huge difference as well. But that's where I feel like you can sort of, all right, let's say you've got the personality, but you don't have the followers. And you've already got the talent. We know that. Maybe you have to rely on making sim racing tutorial videos or something. Working for VRS.
Look, honestly, I've definitely been trying to come up with some ideas to make it interesting. Whether, you know, you have a little segment that goes for 20 minutes or so where you say you're practicing and you've done a nice lap or something, and you just go over and analyze it a little bit, kind of explain what you've done and how you've done it, and maybe, you know, if I make some mistakes, talk about those, and kind of talk about how you can get away with those, or, you know, find a way around it. Talk about what I've done wrong and what I'd have to do to correct that problem. It's definitely something I've thought about. Whether it's something that'd be successful, I'm not sure. But I think definitely, though, like you said, the personality is the more important thing. Like, you look at people like Malone and Quirk. You know, they're still great drivers, but it's their entertainment and personality that brings people. You know, you're not going to watch someone that's driving 10 tenths and is really fast, winning every race, but not talking. You know, so it's a balance between the two, I feel. But you know, I'm no expert, so it's not something I can elaborate on too much. But yeah, although, you know, if you have both, like Shroud, for example, he's entertaining and great at what he does, so it's a win-win.
You sound like you're a CSGO fan.
Look, it's fun. It's not like I just play it for enjoyment or watch it for enjoyment. But yeah, it's good.
You're not one of those toxic kids that'll, like, not speak for 3 rounds and then start raging at all the people with the microphones as being like, you guys freaking can't aim me at the floor, or you're throwing the bomb up there. I've got a boost to get the bomb now, or whatever. You're not one of those kids, are you?
No, not at all. Depends if you're playing casual and it's you know, someone just playing stupid music the whole time.
Just mute them. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, just the mute.
Which reminds me of that, I don't know if you've seen that Tony Stewart video, where these two guys are arguing over the oval. You've seen it, I think.
Yeah, and he's like, brilliant.
Will you two just shut the fuck up? And I'm like, this is so great. I don't know why
brilliant.
Everybody these days, you know how, like, the corporate card sort of motor racing personalities, it's like hit a climax over the past couple of years. And now I feel like it's steering back into the sort of, I don't know if politically incorrect's the right way to put it, but just people who aren't afraid to say it, like, tell it like it is. I'm like, this is great now. This is what we need more of. Everyone's too afraid to even just talk about a video like that. I'm like, what's so bad about that?
I don't know. The problem is, you know, it's perfectly okay and fine to voice your opinion, and that really, in a sense, is the correct opinion. But in the world we live in, it's quite easy to be flamed for things. You know, sometimes it's not worth risking. I'm gonna say reputation, but sometimes it's not worth risking that for saying something that, you know, may be true and in your mind is perfectly okay, but you know, there's definitely times where you know, people make big mistakes, but yeah, it's probably one of the reasons why I stay quiet in a lot of things. But, you know, you look at people like
you gonna name big
who's
drivers?
old mate in No. Who's old mate in F2? Who he was on his phone and stuff in the pits, so rightfully banned.
Oh,
But,
yeah, I
and
can't remember
then
his name. But yeah.
making the silly remarks afterwards all over Twitter and stuff, probably making the problem worse. When he was clearly in the wrong. That's the kind of time when it's good to just accept what you've done and move on with it.
That begs the question now. We know sim racing and Formula One and not just Formula One, but let's say motor racing in general. There's a lot of similarities. Obviously, it's the same sort of type of racing. You're still racing cars, but is there a huge culture difference between the two? Let's call it like esports and like esports / sim racing and motorsport. I feel like there's still a huge culture difference, even though they're technically the sort of the same game or sport.
Look, honestly, I agree. I think it's tough because a lot of the people that are into actual motorsport, whatever motorsport it is, they're going to be interested, so they'll still be interested in the esports side of things. But then there's some personalities that only like the fact that it's the real cars, or there's always that stigma around sim racers or just professional esports players in general, drivers. The fact that what they're doing is not active, or it's not something that a lot of people enjoy, but ultimately there's still someone making a living out of it, and it's what they enjoy doing. If you had a job you enjoyed doing, you're not going to get flamed for it. But yeah, I think there's definitely still a massive culture difference for sure. It'd be nice to be able to bridge that gap. Looks like F1's trying to do that, but sharing and bringing up all this F1 esports hype, but unfortunately I don't think it's working to the maximum potential, but it's definitely working, that said.
Yeah, as I said, I've noticed how I'm not saying like esports or anything is much more there's no demographic of kids or anything. There's a lot of sim racers out there who are in their 40s, 30s.
Yeah.
There's a freaking older, what's that? 60 plus racing adventures. What the hell is that? I've never watched it before. It's on RaceSpot TV, but apparently there's like a league for 60-year-olds plus. And I'm like, see, it's not just dominated by youngins. It's dominated by people who are willing to go out of their box and go outside the blue and do something different. And then I see all these traditional type of thinkers in like comment sections online or whatever saying, oh, this is just a game, and they're all stuck in their basement or whatever, and all that bull crap you hear. And I'm like, 5-10% of sim racers, yeah, they are those guys who are stuck in their mother's basement, but the other 90% aren't.
Oh, that brings me back to some good Twitch clips in races with Nicky Team. Oh, good. That was fun.
Oh, God.
That was fun.
You got to send me these later.
Oh, I will. It's good.
So do you attempt to enter any of those big events? Like I call them the big three so far: World's Fastest Gamer, F1 Esports, or the Visa Vegas E-Race. I don't think you're age eligible for World's Fastest Gamer though.
No, I wanted to, but unfortunately, you had to be 18. I think it was probably the same scenario for with the Visa Vegas E-Race, but it's not something I was interested in at the time. I think F1 Esports. I didn't do it this year. I think it's probably not. I don't know. It's hard because it's not like I've played Codemasters games in a long time. I feel like personally, I'm probably the driver that's might struggle in simcades, or call it a simcade that. But you never know until you try. It's been a long time since I've played those games, so you're not sure. But it's also knowing the game and the way around the cars too. From what I've heard, that in F1 2017 the physics are a little bit out of whack, and the way you set up cars is wrong. So it's something that could be difficult. But if you're in a team that's involved in it, you can do that quite well. And it's just down to you. But ultimately, I'd like to do that in the future. I think it's at that stage where it's really growing and you need to get into it now, sort of thing. That's the way I'm looking at it anyway. With all these drivers being signed to real F1 teams, not sure how long their contracts last for, but it's not like there's going to be a pro draft every year, so, or possibly not. Maybe there will be, but something that you need to be prepared for, and I'd like to prepare myself for that. I think ultimately my enjoyment factor and passion lies with iRacing. I just think because I feel like it's still got the best competition and it's the best simulator what we have at the moment, even though it has its downsides. It's definitely what we've got. So the realism side of things and the competition is definitely great, but you got the exposure side of things with the other titles as well, which is tricky to get around. But hopefully iRacing can grow in the future, but we'll see.
I don't think you'd struggle with Simcades, because if you look at your history now, you're fast in a tin top, you're quick in an open wheeler, GT cars as well, you're pretty quick in. And so normally those guys are real quick in anything you pick up, if that makes sense. I'm not saying you'll go out and win the Pick and every series tomorrow, but what I'm saying is you jump into a Simcade, Project Cars, what are other sims, R-Factor 2, whatever, you'd still be pretty quick, I reckon. I don't know if you noticed that in yourself.
To be honest, I haven't really tried it, so it's hard to tell. But I guess when you look at the people that are racing and that, like, say, take, for example, Yoni Tormula, Fred, Isaac, who else you got? Beneke. I'm not going to say I'm as good as them, because honestly I don't think I am. But I can still be close to them and race them on occasions. So I think personally, there's still that confidence within you that if they can do it, you can too. But it'd probably take me a bit longer to get into it. But whether it would take a month, 6 months, or a year, it's hard to tell. So F1 2018 coming out soon. I might get it when it's on sale one time and just start lapping and see how I can go in the time trials. I'm sure they'll all be on it, trying to improve themselves ahead of the final. But yeah. I think there's always that fire in your stomach and the confidence that you can do it, but it's whether you can get to that final stage. It's a tricky one.
So can we just go straight now to WCS, IWC GPS? I've been told to call it, which is impossible. What happened race 1 Interlagos? Is this just a simple you had a connection issue, or did iRacing something happen with the server? What happened?
Honestly, it was a brain fart. First round, you're excited. Excited to know where you qualified. I was talking to the guys in Discord at the same time. They were telling me, yeah, 8th or whatever. Jumped into a practice session. Obviously starting to drive on race fuel, trying to get a feel for it. I was just so caught up in that I didn't even think to register for the race. It was at the point where I realised everyone was starting to leave the server. And I'm like, oh no, could have done. But look, turned into a massive meme for a little while. But thankfully that's died down a little bit. Bit of a mistake. But I think I'm pretty confident that I'm the first person to register for every race so far after that. So it's never happening again, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's something you can laugh about, especially since you weren't really going for the championship or anything. There's and actually you probably would have finished in the top 10 that race had things gone your way. I mean, I know you started 11th, but you finished in the top 10 every race this season that you've raced in. And most of all, Zandvoort and Imola qualifying on the front two rows, very quick. Even Silverstone too, second row start.
Yeah, I've been really stoked with qualifying lately, to be honest. Like Imola, I was disappointed that I didn't quite get that little bit. I think I lost, the 200ths that I needed out of that last corner, which was frustrating. But, at the end of the day, to know we have the qualifying pace and the one-lap speed is nice. And I think, honestly, I do feel like we had the pace at the start of the races as well. It's just trying to crack that last little bit out of the car that we're struggling with. I don't know if you noticed, like Watkins, for example, hanging with the likes of Kroenke and Gregor for the first 6-7 laps. And after that point, it kind of just all started going downhill. So, I don't know, something we'll have to figure out, something we're trying to figure out. But, yeah, it's probably something simple. But it's just not something we've figured out yet. It might not make logical sense.
So you don't know yet? You don't know whether it's tyres, whether it's an issue with ERS? Because those seem to be the two that are the biggest difference.
I know for sure it's with the tyre. I can feel that. The grip just goes away, and the car just becomes incredibly uneasy to drive. Rears especially. It's just trying to figure out what's causing that at such a pronounced point in the race every time. Zandvoort, I think we made small inroads. Instead of dropping at around 14, we made it to 16 or 17, which helps. But when you can't fight later in the stint, when it's important to, can be tricky. So yeah, something we'll try and crack and try and figure out. But if not this year, then hopefully sorted for next year.
You're not using an excessive caster, are you? Because I had a race once, or a car once, about 8 years ago when I was first sort of getting into serious sim racing. And I found a setting in the car which was, up the caster by about 6 clicks. And I ended up blistering everyone in qualifying by about 0.4 of a second. I had pole. And then when it came to the race, by the end of the first stint, I was overtaken by all 3 guys who were using the same setup. And so I don't know if it's a caster issue. I don't really understand the McLaren because I don't drive it that much.
Look, honestly,
if you knew, you would have toned it down.
I don't really know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I honestly don't think it's something to do with that. I think it's probably a suspension sort of thing. Maybe torsional or heave related, but not really too sure. Something we're trying to work to figure out.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. Could be No, I don't want to say. I don't want to get. I don't want you to reveal too much and get yourself like, Burst eSport, come up, contact Josh Rogers and be like, why'd you tell everybody our setup? By the end of the podcast, I'll have a whole setup sheet of your McLaren ready. So I don't want to get you into that sort of note. But with the ERS as well, is it overcomplicated, or do you think that's an overrated sort of thing that people are talking about with dealing with ERS?
No, it's incredibly. Honestly, in practice, it seems like it's something really complicated. But once you get into a race, after lap 15 or 20, no matter what setting you put it on, it's still going to use the same amount of ERS every lap. It's quite frustrating, to be honest. You find yourself wanting more boost, but you just can't get it. You have to resort to push to pass and things, which is kind of frustrating. But not sure why it does that. I think there might be something to do. It's a new system that was implemented for this season. But I think, I don't necessarily think it's overly complicated, and especially with your quali mode as well now. It's very easy just to, if you want to qualify, you just put it on the quali mode, and that's it. Sometimes, if you're the kind of guy that likes to play with it and tweak around with it, you've got your offset options, but which can make it complicated, but really it's only as complicated as you want to make it. You can just run it all automatic and leave it and never have to worry about it and still be just as fast,
Yeah, and I actually like it. There was an R-Factor plugin we had many, many years ago where we had Kurs. It was in a private Australian league we were in. And it was actually pretty cool to sort of use. And I know it's a little bit sort of similar to ERS, sort of a bit different as well, but once you get used to it, it sort of becomes muscle memory, I think, too, when you adjust settings all the time. I don't know if you're one of those drivers who changes brake bias, do the Nico Rosberg and change it pretty much every freaking corner on the racetrack. But but that becomes like muscle memory after a while, too. So I guess you sort of get used to it. Most of the people complain aren't really at the top of the top of the standings in the Grand Prix series, I guess, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm definitely not the kind of person to change brake bias and stuff constantly. I don't really change many options throughout the car during the race, to be honest, anyway. Normally I'll just, in terms of stuff like that, you just try and set it and get comfortable with it. It's not like you're trying to, and maybe you could try and find more speed out of it by changing it, but it's not something I've ever worried about.
Which actually begs the question, we're coming up towards Indianapolis next weekend, and Indy 2013, there was a huge boycott for the race because of something with iRacing and how drivers weren't happy with the new tire update. iRacing actually did a great job in the end to sort of rectify the issues. But if you're trying to push changes through with this McLaren and nobody's listening to what you want as Josh Rogers, is that where you need more of those world champions like a Hutu or Kroenke to sort of come onto the forums and actually say, hey, we hate this and we want to change this, and then iRacing maybe might listen to them a little bit more?
I think people like Gregor and Martin and Mitchell probably definitely have the reputation that could do that. I don't think everyone's particularly disappointed in the tyre at the moment. I think, to be honest, over last year, it's produced much more exciting racing. And personally, I feel like kind of with real life F1, we've kind of done a swap. This year, it's all one-stops, whereas last year in real life it was quite exciting. Well, I mean, it wasn't exciting to close race, but, there was a lot more pit stops and a lot more strategy going on. But yeah, I think, people like that definitely, I wouldn't say they'd have more sway, but they may produce a little bit more attention, I guess. But, I'm not iRacing, so maybe that's not the case. But from my point of view, it could be a possibility.
Do you think Mitchell can win the championship this year, even though he's only 11 points now above Martin? Or do you think you can win?
Honestly, it's tricky. No, absolutely not. I think for them, we all know Martin's incredibly consistent. At the same time, though, we all know that Mitchell can qualify well and race smart. So, at the end of the day, I think the championship will still be between them two. I think Peter's probably a little bit too far away to be able to do anything, and Gregor missing Zandvoort, and having that issue at Monza, I think that's probably killed this championship, unless, something goes on with the two in front. There's still 5 or 6 rounds to go or whatever, so it's anything can happen, but I think at this stage it's probably too early to call. It depends. I think Martin's probably one of those drivers that once he gets on form, it's hard to knock him off. But if anyone can, it's Mitchell. So be a tricky one. Definitely an exciting one to watch. Hopefully, I'm a part of it. Probably unlikely, but maybe next year.
Well, no, you keep improving race after race. You're sort of like Marcus Jensen from last year. Jensen at the end of the year is like, I'm questioning myself. Is Marcus Jensen a top 5 driver in the league right now? He's that quick. So you never know. But the thing with Kroenke at the moment, I feel like he is actually the quickest driver this year. You take the Monza DNF out. And what else happened as well? Montreal, like 2 race wins. So yeah. Monza, he crashed. That's his fault. Montreal had the connection issue. Yep. So technically he's lost 100 points there. Or around that mark.
Yeah, because he had that race. He had that race wound up in Montreal.
Yeah, he still finished 17th in Montreal. So let's say you add another like 70 points to Martin. He'd be up on the championship by 60 at the moment. But the same can be said for Gregor. Gregor's 100 points behind Mitchell in the lead right now. And Gregor missed, ironically, the first round that you cannot take a drop round in, Zandvoort. And so Gregor's lost at least like a minimum of, I don't know, P5, like 60 points. I don't know. There's a whole lot of luck, right, involved in motor racing. You know that. You've been karting for, 10 plus years already?
Yeah, 10 years. But I think pointing out as well, like you did, for the fact that we're in that stage of the season where there is no drop rounds left, it's important. Consistency is way more important than risking yourself just to get those few extra points. Depending on where you are in the championship, obviously. For me, I just want to aim to be consistent. I'm happy with where I am. I honestly wasn't expecting to even be in the top 10, so I've definitely exceeded my expectations. But for people like Martin and Mitchell, I think for them, if they find themselves in a bit of a predicament, you'll definitely see them maybe be a little bit more cautious. Depending on, how much they're willing to risk it, they might just accept that this race isn't going to go quite as well. We'll come back stronger in the next one, rather than possibly run into the issue of having a moment and throwing the entire championship away. But they're smart enough. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the standings as well. Mac Backham, who is this year's Robert Kubica from 2008, where he's won a race or two, and he led the championship at one stage, but now it's just like, BMW said, no, we're going to halt development on the car. We don't need to keep doing this, and I don't know what's going wrong with Mac. I don't think anything's gone wrong with Mac. I don't know. I think he just needs to find his mojo again. Apart from his 2 race wins, I don't know if you know this, but he hasn't been on the podium. So he won the race at Montreal, won the race at Monza. Still good wins, but 2 races where it was pretty much due to Kroenke sort of making an error. Anyway, I don't want to comment on that. He still finished above Mitchell and Gregor, let me tell you that much. So still very earned wins. Well-earned wins.
I think for Mac at the moment, it's probably just the qualifying thing. I don't think his race pace is too terrible. I think Zandvoort was a tough one for him, but when you're starting back in fifth and sixth, it's quite difficult to move from there. I think honestly, for me, if I'm not starting in the top two rows, I'm probably going to have a tough race. Monza was a outside one because of everyone's issues, but I think if you're starting on the third row, it's hard to push on those first two laps. Sometimes it's hard to find room. There's a lot of defensive driving going on, which is perfectly fine. But at the end of the day, you make your job a lot harder for yourself if you're not qualifying where your race pace is, sort of thing. Look at Martin from last year, qualifying pole, drive away. Like at Silverstone this year, driving in dirty air was incredibly difficult. Being on pole and getting to turn one first was almost a must, really. It's not something that everyone could do, but it was definitely gave you that momentum and that boost for the whole race.
Who are you testing with at the moment? I know you mentioned definitely Marcus Jensen. Pash, you said you were testing with as well?
Yeah. So testing with Pash and also Moritz from Williams eSports. We all came together at the start of the season. Initially, it was just me, Pash, and Moritz. Considering at the time we were all one-man teams, made a little bit of sense to try and work together. And honestly, it helped me and probably the other guys enjoy themselves a little bit more too. But Marcus coming on board as well as a one-man team at the time with Burst. Grew that group to 4, but look, honestly, it's been good. It's been enjoyable. It's nice to be able to bounce things off people. It's been really exciting.
Yeah, you're obviously talking about Moritz Lochner, former Core Sim Rate, Core Motorsports. I get those confused sometimes.
Yep.
And now Williams eSports driver. I mean, incredible change of careers for him in like the space of 6 months. What's Marcus Jensen like, by the way? No one knows anything about him, apart from the fact that he's quick.
Honestly, he's great. He's humble. Give you a little bit quiet sometimes, but look, he's a great bloke. Not the kind of person to rat you out or anything. Like he's really good. This is really good.
It sounds like that didn't give away much at all, Josh. Come on. Maybe I should ask direct questions. Like, what can I ask that's direct? Personality-wise, was he a prankster? You said he's a humble dude. Hobbies? I feel like I need to get Marcus Jensen on a podcast now instead of asking you.
I think you do. Surprised he hasn't been here already. But, look, I don't know too much about his hobbies, to be honest. But, obviously, sim racing is one of them. But... yeah, honestly, he's just such a nice bloke. Humble, great to be around. Yeah, look, it sounds like a fucking love story, doesn't it? But, yeah, no. No.
Before we go, karting quickly. So, I can't believe I didn't spend... Let's just talk about karting for like 5 minutes max. So,
okay.
How successful out of 10 would you say you are right now? Pretty successful karter. I want to say 10 out of 10, not to let you down.
Nah. Honestly,
national karting
has been quite tough. Been racing national for quite a long time now. I think probably a national level for 5 or 6 years now. Haven't had the most success, but I like to think we've been consistently there. Had a couple of state championships along the way. Nothing national. Race wins, round wins, but this year's been tough. We started it out well, but got fallen behind the 8 ball a little bit in the last bit, and kind of lost the opportunity to be able to race over in the world finals. So it's a tough pill to swallow, a big one, but it's only something that you can work on as long as we know where we've kind of fallen behind. Which I think we do. We can work on that, but it's unfortunate. But it's what it is. It's motorsport. It's a tough tough business, tough gig to be in.
Have you ever raced with, or at, Todd Road?
Yeah, several times. It's a good track.
Oh.
Good track.
I love it.
Brilliant.
I've been
Scenery's amazing.
Scenery's great. Good city backdrop. It's the location though is a bit crap. Like it's in the middle of a like
shipping
an industrial
yard dock, like an industrial area. Yeah. The port of Melbourne.
Yeah, the former Docklands now turned into high-rise apartments. But the point is, I've been there a few times, but my favorite moment there was I went on a day where it started to rain just a little bit. Like it wasn't torrential Japanese monsoon, but it was raining quite well. And I saw the midget cart, so all the young drivers. What age is midget cart now? Was it like under 10s or something? Or
no, I think it's midget, which is now Cadet 9. They changed all the names when everyone changed them all. I think it's 7 to 10 or 7 to 9.
Yeah. Okay. So they were using the layout going down the hill into Todd Road. So turn one is the downhill, and I saw all these young karters and they're wet. I am not kidding. 8 karts, turn 1, lap 1 into the gravel trap. Turn 1. I'm not joking. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. And it was, they were literally like, it was cute to watch these little, like, it's like watching Mario Kart in person without all the bananas and the mushrooms and everything. Just seeing the kids standing there in the gravel being like, oh my, what do I do now? Like, they just didn't even know what to do. It was that, that catastrophic for them. I don't know if you were ever that bad when you were young.
Look, I think we were all quite bad when we started things. Sim racing, the same. But, I don't know, it's honestly something you see quite regular at Todd Road. A little bit of sprinkler rain, typical Victorian weather, sunshine. Next hour it's pissing down rain. So, it's turn 1, tight corner, downhill, like you said, lack of grip, easy to do. You see it happen all the time. But yeah, you feel bad laughing about it sometimes, but it can be quite entertaining sometimes when you see those sorts of races.
No, like if that was me, I'd still laugh at myself. Like 10 years later, looking back on the moment, but
10 years later, at the time you'd be gutted. But
so funny. We'll leave it at that. I don't want to slag off 7 to 10-year-old kids too much. Anything to plug, by the way? You got you're on Facebook and Twitter, I assume. You've got your own pages. Burst Esports too. Open their Twitter page, like we said.
Yeah. So you can find me at jkrogers_92 on Twitter. Post a little bit, most of the time just post-race stuff. Also Twitch as well, Twitch TV twitch.tv/TTL_Rogers. Also TTL Esports on Twitter at TTL Esports. Burst Esports on Twitter as well, at eSport Burst. Find them on Facebook as well, under Burst Esport as well. Yeah, big things coming up. Obviously, next round of Racing World Championship Grand Prix Series, and also TTL last round of the VRS GT World Championship Series, which will be exciting. Fighting for a tough 4th place with Williams Esports and Core Sim Racing, so that'll be an exciting one for sure. Hopefully, I can make it to that one. At the moment, it might be tough, but definitely try my best.
Oh, and something I forgot to mention. So the 92 in your Twitter handle, 92 is your number for karting. Very unique number.
Is it? I don't know. For me, I started with 46, but 92 was always my license number. But the tricky thing was back, 10 years or 5-6 years ago, where you'd start for qualifying was based on your number, and obviously you'd want to be either at the front of the grid or the back of the grid. I was always in the middle, so we kind of had to change something about that, and 92 was a good option.
Wait, why would you want to be at the back?
Well, if you're in the middle, in the middle of the mess, everyone's trying to race and jump all over each other. If you're at the back, you can just fall back a little bit and try and hunt the karts in front of you. If you're at the front, you can just plant it out of the gate and get yourself a gap. So it was just all about a clear air sort of thing. But, it definitely works. At least now you can qualify for your group position.
Yeah. You would have been such a secretly arrogant little kid. I know you're a humble guy, but obviously, but I'm saying, like, in your head, you would have been like, I can pass all these karts. Let me start last. I'll pass you all. You're like those guys who jump into, like, races and they'll be like, I'm better than everyone. I'm not testing. I'm starting last. They finish second. and you're like, how the hell did this guy do that? You know, how did they do it with no
No.
testing?
This is grid position for qualifying. That's
For qualifying.
not
sorry.
actually starting position. Yeah. So you got the clear air, and you can drive around hunting carts and not have to worry about getting balked and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Different story then. I got. I should be listening to you, even though we're doing this podcast.
No one wants to start last.
No. Although it is fun. I like those. Some of my favorite ever Formula One videos are people who release those compilation clips of drivers who charge through the field, and it's just incredible. I love it. That's like when I used to. Some of the best fun I ever had sim racing was actually on my own. To get like 100 AI out on a racetrack and just try and pass them all, and actually just have 3 different classes of cars, and you just learn how to sort of overtake people and not have accidents. And actually a good way. Yeah.
It does a little bit about multi-class racing and picking and choosing your points at which you want to do stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for coming on.
No worries.
You can catch this episode of the Simon Racing Report at the Simon Racing Report's website, thesimonracingreport.com. I think it's episode 73. I haven't checked. Obviously, I'll check by the time I release this, but it's around the 73 mark. Lots of episodes coming soon as well that are scheduled. I'm actually overwhelmed in terms of too many guests that I need to bring on in the next couple of months. So hopefully get that sorted soon enough. And hopefully I don't get too lazy and sit on my ass all day so I can actually get those done. And what else? Like the podcast on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter at JohnnyS8, JONNYESS8. Please subscribe, like, share, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, and the one and only, the biggest one of them all, the most important, the least useless RSS feed. Do people actually use RSS feeds? I don't. Oh, and one thing as well, I spoke about the donation link on the homepage. Please donate if you're willing to. Definitely be appreciated if you can. That would really support me. Really help me devote more time to podcasting and even writing something that I'd always want to do as well. If I have the time to commit, but it's not something I can prioritize just in the situation at the moment that I'm in. But also, if you're willing to sponsor the podcast, visit thesimonracingreport.com, click contact at the top, and you can contact me directly and discuss a sponsorship deal. I'm more than happy to do that as well. Otherwise, we're going to keep having our RSS feed fucking sponsor the podcast every single intro and outro like it is right now, the most important thing in the world. But most of all, hope you enjoyed. Josh Rogers, always love talking to this guy. Always sticks around after the race too. Whenever he has a good race, he's always sneakily staying until like 5 a.m. in the morning after WCS races. Always up for a chat. Great dude, star of the future. Catch you soon for more episodes coming soon in the future.